For many years, the EXS-24 sampler was Logic's little sampler that could. Despite its aging user interface, it was actually a pretty powerful and efficient sampler under the hood. But the multi-window interface made the creation and editing of sample-based instruments inefficient and somewhat daunting. Then in Logic 10.5, EXS was reskinned and updated with a new look, a much more efficient layout for making and tweaking sounds, and a number of cool new features. The new version was rechristened Sampler, and I'll start the course off with a thorough look at this slick new replacement for the good old EXS. EXS consisted of the main plugin window, which contained most, though not all, of the programming controls, a separate instrument editor window, where sample mapping was done, key zones and key groups were set up, and advanced sample handling features were enabled and programmed. And to edit the audio data in a sample, the sample had to be opened in the audio file editor. Ultimately, 3 different windows or panes were needed to access all the setup, editing, and programming features. Sampler consolidates all controls into a single plugin window with several panels, much like Logic's consolidated main window that replaced the multiple window approach of older versions. Across the top of the sample plugin window are 5 tabs, which show or hide the 5 panels that contain all of Sampler's controls. From left to right, the tabs open the panes from top to bottom. The Synth tab displays Sampler's basic subtractive synthesis controls, pitch, filters, and amp for shaping sounds. These represent the audio path within Sampler from left to right. The basic controls for those functions are found here for quick access to the most commonly adjusted parameters. A Details panel shows additional related controls, many related to playback modes. I'll go through all of these in detail in later videos. The Mod Matrix is the same Modulation Matrix panel from EXS with a visually cleaner layout. The Mod Matrix lets you assign any control source, including external MIDI messages, to any control destination for parameters in Sampler. Additional destinations reflect some of Sampler's new features. The Modulators panel is where you'll find Sampler's envelope generators and LFOs. The default is 2 envelopes for filter and amp and 1 LFO, but you can add more, up to a maximum of 9 in total, up to 5 envelopes and 4 LFOs, patched as you see fit via the Mod Matrix. The envelopes now include additional configurations besides EXS's basic ADSRs, and this is a very welcome addition for a sampler where the extra stages like hold can be important. The next 2 panels, Mapping and Zone, provide the sample mapping controls that were previously hidden away in EXS's separate instrument editor window. But they do more than just bring those functions to the front panel. The visual displays for sample mapping are completely redone, and it's much easier to graphically edit key zones and velocity zones now. Mapping displays both key zones, which samples will play from which keys, and velocity zones, which layered samples in the same key zone will play in response to different MIDI velocities. Besides Sampler's auto mapping options, you can manually adjust zones by dragging and trimming, and assign them to different key groups as well, all in the same display. But the mapping panel also includes 2 other displays as well. Just like the Details view in the Synth panel, additional zone and group displays allow for more precise editing of both basic and advanced parameters, as well as advanced features relating to sample playback. EXS mavens will recognize these as the displays from the old EXS instrument editor. Though many of these parameters can now be set from the front panel, the inclusion of these displays guarantees backwards compatibility with older EXS patches, and some advanced features can still only be accessed here. Again, I'll go over the most important ones in a later video. Finally, the Zone panel offers sample-level editing of the waveform itself. No more trips to the audio file editor. Here you can set individual sample playback parameters like sample start and endpoints, loop start and endpoints, create loops, and utilize Sampler's new flex capabilities. While some of the more advanced features still require a trip to the legacy zone and group editors, the vast majority of mapping, editing, and programming tasks can now be done in the main Sampler plugin window, making for a much more streamlined experience. Next up, we'll take a quick look at Sampler's audio preferences and file management.